Did I have an affair with my boss? And is it over? Backstory. The boss in question and I never interacted with each other besides passing introductions before the start of this story. Also, I am a closeted lesbian. In November of 2022, my company had an outing for the managers. After the outing, one of my bosses, a 43-ish F and not my direct boss, had the idea to go out for drinks afterward. Me, 24F at the time, being the eager lower-level manager, decided to go to have some fun and bond with people I didn't usually interact with at work. About 6 managers in total went out for drinks, but the boss lady was the most senior ranking. She was getting increasingly drunk, and at the end of the night, when she wanted to go home, I told her I'd drive because I had only one drink in the 3 hours we were there while she was knocking back the margaritas. On our way to her house, she asked to go to another bar for more drinks, to which I agreed as I was already the designated driver at that point. After we left the second bar, I drove her straight to her house. She was so drunk that I had to basically carry her to the house, and that's when she asked if I wanted to kiss her. I said no, because it was inappropriate since she was my boss, but she kept insisting that we should kiss. I got caught up in the moment, and we had a hot makeout session in her driveway. She invited me up to her room, and I declined, walking her to the door instead. After that, we became friends and went out for drinks plenty of times, but only vaguely mentioned that incident twice, where I told her not to worry about it and that I wouldn't say anything. A few months after that first kiss, we went out for drinks again with a former co-worker, 45-ish M, and ended up in a strip club because, in my drunken stupor, I had the idea to go, and they went along. At the end of the night, she told me to go home with her, and I did, where we had sex. The morning after, we went to a fancy restaurant that she picked out, and it felt like a date. At that breakfast, though, she told me about a guy she was seeing and constantly talked about him to me after that day. We continued to ignore the fact that anything physical happened between us, but at work, it was obvious she started boosting my ratings and highlighting my performance to the other managers at her level. I even dog-sat for 3 weeks while she went on vacation with no payment. We became what I thought were actual friends, and I even told her I am a lesbian but can't come out because of my family. A year after that first company outing, we had another one where she asked if I wanted to hang out with her and her cousin, whom I had met before during one of the times we went out. I said yes, as I always did. When we got to the bar, she said her cousin couldn't make it. We both decided to get drunk to have fun, and I ended up at her house because she said I should go home with her instead of taking an Uber home, which I had planned to do. When we got to her house, she told me to sleep in her bed and then started kissing me again, which led to sex one last time. Again, we did not mention any physical interaction after the night was over. A few months into 2024, we had a disagreement about a mutual friend's drama, and she said that she wishes she had never started hanging out with me, and that our friendship was inappropriate since she was a higher level than me. Since that comment, I completely ghosted her and she ghosted me. Did I have an affair with my boss, and is it over? When this all started, I had no idea it would lead to such complicated emotions and actions. Initially, our interactions were strictly professional, with minimal contact beyond passing introductions. However, the company outing in November 2022 marked a turning point. After the official event, my boss suggested going out for drinks. I saw this as a chance to bond and get to know my colleagues better. At the end of the night, it was clear she had too much to drink, so I offered to drive her home. She wanted to continue drinking, so we went to another bar. By the time we got to her house, she was very drunk. She asked if I wanted to kiss her, which caught me off guard. I initially refused, citing the inappropriate nature of such an action between a boss and an employee. But she kept insisting, and caught up in the moment, we ended up kissing passionately in her driveway. She invited me up to her room, but I declined and walked her to her door instead. This incident marked the beginning of a complicated relationship. We started going out for drinks more often and became friends, although we only vaguely mentioned that first kiss twice. Months later, during another night out with a former co-worker, we ended up at a strip club. By the end of the night, she invited me to her place again, and this time I went. We had sex, and the next morning, she took me to a fancy restaurant for breakfast. It felt like a date, but she talked about a guy she was seeing, which confused me. Despite these intimate encounters, we never talked about what had happened between us. At work, she began to highlight my performance and boost my ratings. She even trusted me enough to dog sit for 3 weeks while she was on vacation, without any payment. We became what I thought were actual friends, and I confided in her about being a closeted lesbian. A year after our first company outing, we had another one. She invited me to hang out with her and her cousin, but when we got to the bar, she said her cousin couldn't make it. We both got drunk, and she insisted I go home with her instead of taking an Uber. Once again, we ended up having sex. After that night, we continued to ignore the physical aspect of our relationship. However, a few months into 2024, we had a disagreement about a mutual friend's drama. During the argument, she said she wished she had never started hanging out with me, and that our friendship was inappropriate given her higher position. That comment stung, and since then, we have both ghosted each other. Reflecting on the entire situation, I am left wondering if I had an affair with my boss, and whether it is truly over. The timeline of events is still fresh in my mind. Our relationship began professionally, and evolved into a friendship marked by blurred boundaries and hidden emotions. The initial outing was innocent enough, but the subsequent nights out, and the intimate encounters complicated things significantly. After our first kiss, we became friends and enjoyed each other's company. Despite the age gap and the professional hierarchy, we found common ground and shared many good times. However, the line between friendship and something more was crossed when we had sex after a night out at a strip club. It felt surreal, especially when we had breakfast the next morning, and she talked about another guy she was seeing. At work, her support for me grew, and she started boosting my ratings and praising my performance to other managers. It felt good to be recognized, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that our physical interactions played a role in this favoritism. I trusted her enough to come out as a lesbian, something I hadn't told many people due to my family's views. The second company outing marked another turning point. Her cousin bailed, and we ended up getting drunk and going back to her place again. The pattern repeated: kissing, sex, and then silence about what had happened. It was as if we had an unspoken agreement to never address the physical aspect of our relationship. Our fallout came unexpectedly. A disagreement about a mutual friend led to her saying she wished she had never started hanging out with me, and that our friendship was inappropriate. Her words hurt, and since then, we have both ghosted each other. Now I am left with many questions. Did I have an affair with my boss? Given the secrecy and the professional implications, it feels like an affair, even though we never explicitly labeled it as such. Is it over? It certainly feels like it, but the emotional and professional fallout is still something I'm grappling with. TLDR, my boss and I, both female, had sex a few times, never talked about it, became friends, and now don't talk because she said she doesn't think we should have ever been friends. Did I have an affair with my boss, and is it over?